Hi, this is Bob Scully, and welcome to a very special edition of the World Show, the Synovus Series Holiday Edition. And in this once-a-year episode, obviously we want to present an entrepreneur, but not just any entrepreneur. This is a man who is widely admired for his success. From Heilongjiang province in China to the United Arab Emirates, people come to consult him and see his operation. His operation is called Parc Safari, and it's on the New York State border with Canada. And to get a fix on it, I'll just throw out a movie title. You may have seen this wonderful movie, We Bought a Zoo, starring Matt Damon. Well, the stories are similar. Jean-Pierre bought a zoo. Just like the character that Matt Damon plays, he had all kinds of financial trials and tribulations trying to save it. His employees were with him all the way. They loved him, but it was a terrible situation. All kinds of regulatory difficulties. Practically the same situation with the same great result. He saves the zoo, and he does it because he is possessed of such a love of animals, a love that we all have inside us. But Jean-Pierre is eloquent about it and brings it out in all of us. Here he is. Jean-Pierre, Matt Damon bought a zoo, and so did you. And of course, the circumstances are very different, and it's for real in your case, and Parc Safari is doing very well, but it wasn't always thus. How did you get into this?
When I was very young, I worked for an American company called Hardwick, and I did the advertising for them. It was very successful, and a few years later, I came back as a consultant to the park. That's from 1983, 84 to 1990, and then the opportunity arose and I was able to buy it. That lasted for 8 years. We had a falling out situation with my associates. I left, and then I came back in 2002, this is what you're alluding to, as the sole proprietor of Parc Safari. So a little bit like Matt Damon, I jumped into something that I thought I knew, which he didn't, and probably had as much difficulty as he did.
And it starts with the phase two, where they call on you. It really starts literally with a phone call. You were working at a space camp, very different endeavor. It's an attraction, but very different. And one morning you get a call.
Yeah, I took over Space Camp Canada after major financial difficulties because I'm like a troubleshooter in the world of business. But because I knew Parc Safari, the people in the area where that park is located, south of Montreal, gave me a call. It was 10 in the morning, and the person responsible for economic development said, "Jean-Pierre, you read the paper?" And I said, "Yes."
It was bankrupt.
Well, yeah, the word bankrupt tells everything. And he said, "Would you come back?" And I didn't hesitate 1 second, because I had been spending 3 years at the Cosmodome. I think I had done my proper work there. It was back in as a profitable venture, and they would not sell me a $30 million business, so Parc Safari was on a much smaller scale, and I said yes immediately. I said, tomorrow I'll be there to take over the park if things can be arranged so that after the bankruptcy I can buy it.
And you did.
And I did.
And Parc Safari it started out as, I think that was the original, the Hardwick concept, as something where you would take your car, and it was an outdoor park with animals roaming free, African animals, and following certain safety procedures, you'd drive through and stop, but you couldn't get out. But now it's something much more sophisticated. Well, what does it look like today?
Well, the story you've just alluded to started back in '62 in England, in Longleat. The Chipperfield family had this concept of putting animals in a large expanse of land where people could come with their car and see it. Parc Safari was the fifth such park in the world. The concept at the time developed with Warner Brother that in some way were not competing, but were developing on their own something that would match what Disney was doing. The idea was to take a large expanse of land and to put a replica of Africa close to urban centers. Montreal happened to be one of the places chosen by the Hardwick companies, but I was responsible to open 4 such parks in Europe. I did one in France, Spain, Germany, and England. And the idea was that once you've got this business going, you can add on to it with a camping facility, and then you can add a separate water park from the entity itself. So it's a whole concept of bringing a number of attractions together over an expanse of land with facilities, let's say tourism-related services, and that is what brought me back to Parc Safari in 2002, because I had witnessed such developments. And to me, it was a wonderful opportunity to go back to what it is that I spent my life doing. I've been in the tourism business for 40 years, and suddenly I can do what it is that I was witnessing as successful business ventures. And it was easy for me to say yes.
Yeah, and it's obvious that you still enjoy it today. I mean, it's your life's calling. But people watching who saw the movie would like to know about some of those difficulties, because I know there were many, but especially involving animals, it's always very endearing to see them. But tell me about the tiger who ate the tires. I mean, just let's start with that.
Well, that's back in 1974. The Austin 850, I mean, there's probably the smallest car on the market at the time, came to the park. It was all dressed up with numbers on it because it was a racing car. And the people in it probably didn't know, but they were on real tires made of rubber. And in one of the enclosures, where there were tigers, they were stopped at a fence because the different enclosures were separated by gates that you could open. And the two tigers came around the car and literally chew off the tires, puncturing them. So this little Austin 850 just deflated, came down by about 2 or 3 inches, and the people in the car were panicked.
I'm sure, because the tigers are bigger than the car.
They were certainly at eye level. And this is something I can't forget, because we were we were sued because they asked us to replace the tires. But you know, those are the fantastic moments in one's life when you know, this is like 40 years ago.
This was before cell phones, right?
You better believe it. This was before cell phones.
They couldn't call you for help. It's a good thing somebody saw it, or what?
Well, at that time, we had Land Rovers in those different enclosures with lions, tigers, cheetahs, bears, chimpanzees, macaques. So there were patrols going in the area, and at those gates, there are people in
guard towers?
Exactly, towers, watchtowers, that would open the gate once the animal were removed from an area where they could literally run into the other enclosure. So this happened right in front of one such enclosure. So with smoke signals, they were able to tell the guards that they had to come and attend to the needs of these people.
My God. And I didn't know rubber was a delicacy for tigers.
I didn't either, but...
Boy, and did you ever have any other close calls? And now I'm including the entire period of the park.
Well, in 1973, we did have a close call. We had received those tigers, and on a Monday night at 10 or 11 p.m., we were informed that tigers were roaming free in the village of Hemingford, and we had lost literally 12 tigers in the nature. And it took 2.5 days. That little story went around the world, and there were TV cameras at the time and radio journalists who covered this story.
They escaped through what, through a hole?
Well,
in the fence?
Somebody left a door unlocked or opened. It's certainly not on purpose that it happened, but these animals had just arrived a week or two before. They were to be put for presentations in one of the large enclosures, but they escaped, and none of the animals were killed in the process of capturing them, because food was put in the enclosures. Many of them came back on their own. Some had to be put to sleep and brought back to the enclosures. But the last one was caught on the Wednesday around noontime, and that is something that went around the world.
I'm sure. And did they show up in somebody's kitchen? No.
No, but I can tell, if I still have this book of newspaper clipping where you can see a farmer doing the hay in his fields with a shotgun next to him.
Just in case.
And since that time, we do have what we call a red plan for alert in case animals escape. We didn't have such plans before, but now we do.
And how about imprudent? I would think that this is a risk, an occupational risk of this kind of industry, imprudent visitors. In other words, here we're talking about maybe somebody careless and your personnel left a door open, ajar. But it's logical. Animals are so fascinating. We often hear at the Bronx Zoo or whatever, somebody puts an arm in there, foolishly, and then whoop, the arm is gone. Are you constantly on alert for that?
I'm an old man, and I've had the opportunity to go around the world and see many facilities. What it is that has been done at the park in the past 10 years is to look at all facilities and take lessons from those shortcomings that eventually come to the surface because incidents occur. We have had no accidents relating to employees or guests in the 10 years I've been there. But we spent $17 million improving the animal keeping facilities, the safety of the animal, and the safety of our employees, and the safety of guests. One of the features that is unique in North America is the glass tunnels we
Yes,
have
they're
built
beautiful.
for visitors to see lions literally within, well, it's 19 millimeters thick, the glass of the glass tunnel. Those facilities are unique, and they contribute to the safety of guests, the comfort of animal, and of course a gigantic surprise that our guests have when they visit Parc Safari.
So it's a tunnel, it's a glass tunnel running through the enclosure.
Exactly.
And the tigers can be above you, the lions, or they
Right.
can be right next to you.
They can even pee on you, but the glass will protect you from that, because they're defending their space, and they see you coming in there, and occasionally you have the surprise.
And do they get blasé, though, the animals? I mean, because they see that, I assume the first day when they're in an enclosure and they see people, you know, they want to paw them and everything. But after a while, do you have trouble for the kids and so on? You want the tigers to climb on the tunnel and everything. Do you have little tricks to keep them alert?
Well, in the zoo environment, and sometimes what it is that we do can be contested, we try to enrich the life of animals that normally would be in very large expanse, whether it's Africa or the Himalayas. And what it is that we do is create games. What you've just said is, for example, feeding time. Instead of giving them a plate with 10 kilos of food, we will hide the food in the enclosure, and they have to go search for it. Or we will throw the food or attach it to a rope and let them jump to go catch it. We can do that with most species. Our animal people, the animal keepers, enjoy those roles because it's an active interaction with the animals, as opposed to just putting the food out and letting them go for it. So what it is that you're referring to, although the space is not as large as it is in nature, Parc Safari and other zoos of that nature, there are 10 such parks around the world, I think we're striving to bring to the animals the type of environment that provides them with large space, and let me see the excitement of going for the kill in terms of finding a prey that will feed them for a week or a couple of days. So we do and strive to make this a reality and not just something that's a show for the public.
And do you encourage, one of the things that always makes the newspapers is the birth of, in any species, the birth of some babies, breeding in other words, but that's hard to achieve. Is that one of your focuses too?
Well, institutions such as ours do have a responsibility with international organizations to protect the genetic value of different animals that are endangered. So Parc Safari has 25 species of animal that are on the endangered list. The breeding of lions and tigers is relatively easy. Now, it is true that in nature they don't have as much space to roam freely in, so those animals that remain are in institutions. Even in South Africa, where you may have 3,000 acres of land, it's a finite space where people can keep lions or other species that they decide to control. What it is that we wish to do, and I think I've put myself in a box in responding to your question, is the idea of growth by the multiplication is limited. It is limited to the extent that if our facility is 5 acres and we can put 5 giraffes on 5 acres, I think we should limit it to that. And we do that with bird control.
Oh, you do? Or you
yes,
don't want, because if you had a baby giraffe, you could still give it away to another zoo, but the event is considered such an
That's
attention
true,
getter.
but we are all living within the confines of the available space. So those exchanges between institutions, it does exist, but it cannot be left to nature to provide us with so many new animals of certain species. This has to be discussed and planned in collaboration between the different zoological institutions, whether it be Europe or America.
And I'm talking about births, but I should talk also about deaths, because you had the death of an elephant who was beloved by everybody at the park, and you had a ceremony.
Churchill was an animal that many people, thousands of people rode on. It was a circus animal that was purchased by the park or came to the park in the early 90s or late 80s. I was not at the park when that occurred. And of course, when you call an animal Churchill, and it's Lady Churchill, by the way, and it's a trained animal, you can walk around with Lady Churchill. She was very friendly. And one morning, walking out towards her enclosure, she just fell and
collapsed.
Let me say, a heart attack. We did not do an autopsy. The animal fell. We called the vet. We called in the people attending to her care, and in a matter of hours, she had stopped breathing. We covered her, and then we had this instant caucus on what it is that we would do, and the employees. I'm sorry, this is very emotional, but decided to. We brought in a mechanical shovel. We dug a 3-meter, 10-foot deep hole, and with her white tusks, we put her in there and buried her in the what we call the African savanna. We have an area where the animals roam free. Zebras,
so
giraffes.
now it's other animals are roaming there.
The next morning, this is unbelievable. The rhinoceros spent the day walking around the area where she was buried.
Because he could smell.
Yeah. Well,
or
I'm not sure what happened, but something very special was happening.
Yeah. And so this is an enterprise. It's entrepreneurial, but it's something that people obviously grow attached to. You and everybody else.
You grow attached to your cat, to your parrot, to your dog. Well, when you literally live 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, well, that's not true, 14 hours a day with your animals, you know their name, and you can tell if they're in a good mood or not in a good mood. And it's like having children or having friends or your colleagues at work. You can sense that things are right or things are not right. And at Parc Safari, I'm extremely proud to say that what it is we have done in the past 10 years is to build facilities unique in the world. They're the most advanced animal keeping facilities you can see. And our animals are well kept. They have everything they need. Our employees are safe when they look after them. And the relationship is very intimate. Very special world, very special.
And in such a, in a way, perfect world, you would expect that there'd be no dark clouds, but it is an enterprise. And financing, permissions, regulations, you have to fight all of that.
They drive you crazy.
Yeah, it's
They
incredible.
don't drive you crazy. If my hair were black 10 years ago, no.
You would think that they would all want to help, but yes and no.
Well, don't get me to speak about government legislation in Canada or in Quebec, because that may be a very sour note, but it is extremely difficult to comprehend why there's such a discrepancy between what it is that we do and some of the legislation that's in place. I mean, we have huge projects, and yes, governmental regulation is creating some difficulties in our efforts to become better and to do more and to contribute to the economic development, to education development of our society. And it is true for us, and probably is true
what's
for...
funny is that a lot of these regulations were put in place, quote unquote, to protect the animals, but you also want to protect the animals, but bureaucracy, and this is I don't want to keep going back to this movie, but I have to. Matt Damon has the same problem. He has this inspector who's going around, you know, who might close his zoo. Have you been through situations like that?
Closing the zoo, no. But questions asked relating to how we remove manure and dejection of the animals, how that is handled, water disposal, the safety of guests. We are on top of things, and I think we know what it is that has to be done, because our association in Canada is self-regulatory. And when certain administrators from the government decide to take one rule totally out of context, they can drive you crazy. And I didn't see the movie with Matt Damon, but if in the movie he wants to go bananas, I can tell you on a few occasions I wanted to go bananas.
Well, he has two problems. That's one of them. The other one, of course, is financing. Our banks, I mean, I know how banks deal with restaurants and clothing stores. They have these sectors that they don't like, and they're always pulling plugs. What category are you in? Are banks friendly to you or not?
In Canada, we have this government organization called Développement Économique Canada, Economic Development Canada, and we have the Bank of the Development of Canada. Those two partners have associated with the Parc, maybe because the Parc's 40-year history is a testimony that it renders real services. Now, you take an old man like myself, and I never went bankrupt. I think I ran different businesses I don't think I did run them successfully. And when I was given the opportunity to take over the Parc and to become the owner, yes, at the onset, the verification of what it is that we did was close. They kept a close eye on what we did. But since 2004, after we built the tunnels, after we built the first new enclosure for the animal, for the feline, we had no problem. I mean, the bank is following us, whether it is a federal government bank or a private bank, we have no problem. But then we're profitable. I think we render good services to the guests. With all due respect, I think you have witnessed what it is that you do yourself with your family.
I loved it,
And it's growing. From year to year, our attendance is up, and the quality of the service and the facilities is growing. In a certain way, that is what the banks wish to see.
And the philosophical debate on animals in captivity, I've just from reading in the papers over the years, I've noticed there are many different trends. Zoos such as this are admired because you give the animals space and so on. The old type zoo is no longer the Central Park type of thing. Is really, they've made some nice efforts, but I mean, by the very fact that it's very enclosed, is not as appreciated, it would seem, by people who know about these things. And there's also a radical fringe that says we shouldn't have any of these things. The animals are always unhappy. Is that impinging in any way on what you do, that kind of debate?
In Canada, we are witnessing such movement of thought, and Parc Safari, as far as I'm concerned, at the moment is not under any stress or any strain or any such demand. The philosophical debate you're alluding to is a legitimate one, and if you push that reasoning all the way, one can ask, are we too many on planet Earth? There's only one planet, it's the blue planet, and there's 7 million of us on it. What's the limit? What it is that we have seen with the past 50 years is population going from 3.5 billion to 7 billion. We occupy all the space available where arable land allows cultures to be fertile enough to feed population. The industrialization of agriculture has pushed the farmers to the cities, with Shanghai and Beijing and Mexico and New York and Los Angeles. So there's a concentration in urban centers. What does that do? That literally makes parts of the planet totally invivable.
Unlivable.
Unlivable. Now, it may be livable now if you're wealthy, industrialized, you have electricity. But think of the Calcuttas of this planet and think of Karachi and of the certain megalopolis of Africa. And we find limits. The world of animals that we alluded to begin to get back to your question, they have no place to go. So start from that premise as opposed to saying, can they be kept in zoos in an acceptable living condition? Start from the premise that the tigers have no place to go to, and the lions have no place to go to, and the giraffes have no place to go to. The alligators have no place to go to. So what do? Even the whales have no place to go to. I mean, the world is becoming smaller, and we have to find ways to protect what it is that can be protected. In Canada, the white bears, where did they go if the Arctic melts? We'll have to find a place for them. Otherwise, it'll disappear. So these are societal changes that are occurring in our lifetime. And you have to objectively look at this. Somebody that takes a stance and says they shouldn't be there, they're allowed their opinion. I don't share it.
And to tell you the truth, if indeed they have less and less place to go, and if I was a giraffe or a polar bear, I'd say I want to go to Parc Safari because it looks like a great place and it's a great company. And Jean-Pierre Ranger, long life and good luck.
Thank you very much.
Jean-Pierre Ranger was our guest on this very special annual holiday edition of the World Show. And of course, you know what's coming. You can see it coming. And if you've been with us for a few years, we've actually been doing this for over 2 decades. It's always a pleasure and always an honor to thank you in proper fashion, to toast you. In my name and in the name of my colleagues, producers Claudette Thierette, Michelle Marchand, Francine Blaise. Let's see if we have a good year this year. I'm sure we will. And there we are. All right. Doesn't get any better than that. And so once again, thank you for being there. We'll be there for you in 2013.